How lovely to be with you all. And thank you, Ben. And thank you to Steve Shore and all the team at The Real Truth About Health for inviting me to share some thoughts with you. What a wonderful program and what a broad range of speakers you have. It's a real honor to be here. So let me start my presentation here and then we can get started with this remarkable concept of disease reversal. Let me make the video panel and great. Okay, disease reversal. What an interesting concept. I practiced medicine for 45 years before anybody put these two words in the same sentence for me. I wish someone had told me about this in medical school, but now it's starting to be a widely understood concept, and I'd like to share it with you. I've been going around to the nation's medical schools. In fact, we're on the continent, been up in Canada, down in Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. And I've been trying to reach the first, second, third year medical students before pharmacosclerosis sets into their brains. And they think that drugs and surgery are the only treatment for diseases. And I've been telling these young students that, look, in histology class, pathology class, you're going to be learning about all these weird and wonderful diseases from smallpox to leprosy. But when you get out in the real world, when you open the door to the emergency room or the surgical outpatient waiting room, you're not going to be seeing patients with smallpox and leprosy, thank God. What you're going to be seeing is a large group of people with a small group of diseases. The vast majority of them are going to be overweight, if not grossly obese. You're going to see rampant artery disease manifesting as high blood pressure, high blood lipids, clogged arteries showing up as angina, claudication, strokes. You're going to see widespread type 2 diabetes. We'll be talking about that, and a host of inflammatory diseases involving all the organ systems, lungs, skin, the joints, gut. This is Western medicine in the 21st century, and there's a good chance that some of you out in the audience are suffering from these same conditions. And what do we tell patients? Well, when the erstwhile student looks into their medical books, they're still using books, they go online, they ask their professors, what's the cause of high blood pressure? What's the cause of clogged arteries? They run into two words that basically stops all constructive thought: etiology unknown. We don't know the cause of these diseases. We don't know the cause of atherosclerosis. We don't know the cause of hypertension. And it's true, I will grant, at this stage, we've not teased out every last little mechanism, elucidating how genes interact with enzymes and the surrounding vitamins and minerals. Yes, there's lots more discoveries to be made on that microgranular level. That's true, I grant that. Lots of advances will come from that. But what a disempowering place to stop your inquiry. Because if you don't know the cause of a disease, you can't cure it. And that reduces the doctor to the manager of chronic disease. We'll manage your high blood pressure. We'll manage your diabetes. We'll manage your obesity. And this is such a dismal message, because what you're really telling the patients, you're going to be sick the rest of your life. Got diabetes, you'll always be diabetic. You're taking high blood pressure pills, you'll take these pills the rest of your life. Nobody gets off these pills. What a hopeless message to give your patients. What a dismal way to practice medicine. And no wonder so many young doctors are leaving the profession. I tell them, I don't know about you, I did not go into medicine to manage chronic disease. I wanted to cure people. And the truth is that every one of these lethal degenerative diseases that plague so much of Western society and take up the majority of time and energy and money in the Western medical system, these are reversible diseases. Every single one of these diseases can be made much, much better, if not completely reversed, with a healthy diet and lifestyle. Yet nobody's telling this to the young doctors, but that's what I've been trying to do. And now there's allies, everyone from Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We're trying to get this message across. These are reversible diseases, and the public needs to know this. But how do we reverse them, and why do they reverse? Well, that's what I'm going to be sharing with you over the next 40 minutes or so. So some basic truths. The body has an innate tendency to heal and function optimally. And every doctor knows this. When I'm working in the emergency room and someone comes in with a nasty laceration, I take it on my scalpel and I clean up the edges and bring out the sutures, and I suture the wound closed, and I bring those wound edges together as artistically and beautifully as I can. But I've got no illusions. All I've done is a mechanical act. I've just brought those wound edges together. I don't know how to spin collagen fibers across the gap of that wound, but the body does know. I don't know how to spin out new blood vessels to bring new blood circulation to this healing wound, but the patient's body knows how to do this. When we each have the flu or COVID, and we feel miserable, like we're afraid we're going to die, you feel like you're going to die, but you're afraid you won't, and you're so achy and just feel miserable. And then that blessed day comes when the body throws it off. You wake up and, hey, I'm okay again. How does your body know to do that? The fact that we tend to return to a state of health and a state of optimal function. This is so beautiful. It's sacred. It's so powerful. But we've got to let these forces do their magic, do their work. And that's the art of what I'm trying to get across as far as disease reversal. I had a smart professor in medical school say, people don't get diseases. They earn them. Now, I'm not blaming, this is, oh, yeah, here you are blaming the patient, blaming the victim for their disease. I'm not blaming anybody, but it's just simple biology. If the 2-pack-a-day smoker is scorching their lung linings with hot smoke 40, 50, 60 times a day, and they so burn and scar up their lung linings that they get emphysema and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, I'm not blaming them. It's just biology. It's just what they did. If the person who drinks a pint of whiskey every day and floods their liver with alcohol, drink after drink after drink, eventually you're going to inflame that liver, scar it up, and turn it into a piece of shoe leather from cirrhosis. I'm not blaming the person, but this is what happens. It's just biology here, and that's what I'm talking about here. There are powerful biological forces that we can either promote or we can foil through our diet and lifestyle. So this talk is making disease reversal work for you. First and foremost, the key is I'm not going to give you some magic vitamin or mineral supplement or some magical formula to eat 2 rutabagas and hang a piece of garlic around your neck. This is a basic, simple human psychological mechanism. Stop kidding yourself is where healing really starts. I tell this to my patients in the office. I tell it to the medical students. So let's talk some fundamentals here. Disease, just about any type, except of course congenital diseases and I guess motor vehicle accidents, things like that. But generally, disease results from the violation of natural law. For carnivores like mountain lions and your house cat, a flesh-based diet is what they naturally eat. They're following natural law when they eat a piece of flesh. Plant-eating hominids like gorillas and bonobos, they are designed to eat a steady stream of leaves and fruits and whole plant foods. And the truth is that from our small mouths and our flat grinding molar teeth and our rotary jaws and our long intestines for handling fiber, and in our saliva, we've got digestive enzymes that digest starches, not protein. We're plant-eating hominids. We have basically the same digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins do. And when we violate that law, when we go to consuming a diet based on animal flesh, like the carnivores do, well, then there's some biological results from that are often very dangerous here. So, first thing to stop kidding yourself about is the standard American diet. If you're eating it in any way, shape, or form, and that's usually a meat-based meal surrounded with lots of sugar, salt, fat, and processed food chemicals. If you're eating that, stop kidding yourself. I tell the medical students who are still in etiology unknown land, but we don't know the cause of high blood pressure, we don't know the cause of type 2 diabetes. I'll say, look at what your patients are eating. Look at what most people are eating. We become a fast food nation. Now, I know that not all of you, and if you are hip enough to be attending this conference, you probably already are migrating your diet to a more plant-based one, even if you still include animal flesh in it, you're migrating towards a plant-based diet. And so I'm not wagging any fingers at you, but for your friends, your relatives, or if you are still just putting your toe in the water here, let's talk about some of the realities of the standard American diet, what it really does in the human body. So some basic science here. If you were to eat a diet based on whole plant foods, which is what I'm advocating, and here's a nice meal, colorful salad here, a hearty vegetable bean stew. Here's what quinoa and zucchini boats, nice steamed green and yellow vegetables. You eat a meal like this. And if an hour later I sneak up on you with a needle and a syringe in my hand, and when you weren't looking, I draw 5 cc's of blood into a red top tube, let that blood clot, spin it down in a centrifuge and have a look at it, this is what you'd see. And the red clot goes to the bottom, and the liquid part of the blood, the serum, rises up to the top. And this is how your blood should look. It's crystal clear. You can read newsprint the normal serum. This is what your blood should look like after you eat a meal. But if you have a standard American diet, bacon and eggs for breakfast, or cheeseburgers and fries for lunch, or pizza, fried chicken for dinner, you eat any kind of meal like this. And an hour later, I were to draw that same tube of blood, spin it down, and have a look at it. What you'd see is that normally crystal clear serum has this milky appearance. This is called lipemia. Lipemia means fat in the blood. Postprandial means after eating. This is the fat in the blood after eating. Now, I will grant that not everybody shows it this optically densely, but everybody has a wave of fat that goes through your bloodstream after you eat a fatty meal. How can you not? Where else is it going to go? And your blood stays fatty for 5 hours. Here's Kuo's classic study. They gave someone a fatty meal at hour 0, and they drew blood once an hour for 6 hours. And they took those 6 blood tubes and put them one after another into a spectrophotometer to measure how fatty the blood is appearing, how milky it's looking. And you can see the blood getting fattier and fattier and fattier and fattier. It takes the liver about 5 hours to begin to clear the fat out of the blood and bend that curve down. And during these 5 hours, actually 6 hours, while the blood is so thick with fat, evil things are happening. This is not a good state. The artery walls are getting injured, opening the door to atherosclerotic plaque formation, leading to heart attacks and strokes. As the fat flows through the abdominal fat stores, it sticks there, increasing abdominal obesity. I'll show you how the fat increases insulin resistance, making diabetes worse. And saturated fats are pro-inflammatory. They fan inflammatory reactions throughout the body. This is what's happening for those 5 hours after you eat that fatty, processed, sugary, oily, salty meal. Well, think of what this means in the pattern that most Americans conduct their eating day. And when I say Americans, it's people eating in the Western style. The Canadians do it, the Brits, the Aussies, the Kiwis, anyone eating this Western style is going to be doing this to their bloodstream. They start their morning off with something fatty, a Greek muffin, bacon, and eggs, and as I said, all for the next 5 hours. Their blood's running thick with fat, their arteries are getting injured, obesity is increasing, inflammation is going up, diabetes getting worse. Takes the liver till about noontime to begin to clear the breakfast time fat out of the bloodstream. When time to head to the cafeteria and have a piece for lunch, and another wave of fat goes through the bloodstream. And all afternoon, the arteries are injured, obesity is increasing, diabetes getting worse, inflammation is going up. Takes the liver till about dinner time to begin to clear the lunchtime fat out of the bloodstream. When time to visit the colonel and send another wave of fat through the bloodstream. And all evening, the arteries are getting injured, obesity is increasing, diabetes is getting worse, inflammation is going up. Takes the liver till about 10 o'clock at night to begin to clear the dinner time fat out of the bloodstream, when on the way back to the bedroom, we polish off that half pint of ice cream and another wave of fat goes to the bloodstream. And the truth is, most people in the West are keeping their blood fatty all day. The stuff never clears out of the bloodstream. We are constantly in the postprandial state. Why? Because hunger simply is not tolerated in our society. We are so wealthy in all Western societies that as soon as you get at all munchy hungry, if you're home, you stick your head in the refrigerator and lay out for last night's leftovers. If you're out, you head for the convenience store or the restaurant, and we are constantly eating, essentially. And so we are constantly keeping our blood in some variety of this appearance. Now, I'm focusing on fat, but it is not the great evil substance here. I'm using the fat just as a marker to show you how long the blood is affected by each meal, but there is a lot more in the blood besides that fat. And so let's deal with other things. We got to stop kidding yourself, and that's the high amount of sodium in the Western diet. And people say, oh, I really don't use salt shaker at the table anymore. Actually, that's the one place you get to control the salt you might add. I'm talking about the sodium that's in processed foods, the restaurant meal, the prepared meats, the cheeses, the French fries, the chips, the crisps people eat. This is where all that salt is hiding. It's already in the spaghetti sauce at the Italian restaurant. It's in the soy sauce at the or Asian restaurant. It's a high sodium diet. Now, all the salt flowing into the bloodstream will work its way into the artery walls, stiffens the artery walls, makes the kidneys retain fluid to dilute out the salt. All this raises blood pressure. This damages the eyes, the kidneys, and sets people up for strokes and heart attacks. But also, we now are realizing that all this sodium in the bloodstream turns on particular type of lymphocytes, the Th17 helper cells, and this opens the door to autoimmune diseases like lupus. The high salt diets are not helpful. And so this is something we've got to stop kidding ourselves about. Then something else is eating sugar as a food. And I especially phrase it like this. I'm not talking about a half a teaspoon of maple syrup in your tea as a sweetener. That's how it's supposed to be used as a flavoring. I'm talking about eating sugar as a food. When you eat that cupcake, the donut, the candy bar, you drink that cola, you are flooding your tissues with huge amounts of fructose, maltose, dextrose. This is not healthy. Now, why? Sugar was never meant to be eaten as a food, as a flavor. The reason why this is so dangerous is known to every baker, really. In the bakery, they know all about the Maillard reaction. What is that? Well, the chemist will say if you take sugars and combine it with protein and then heat it up, you get the Maillard products. What are these? Well, they're called advanced glycation end products. And in the bakery, the sugar is pastry flour. It's the starch and sugar in the pastry flour. The protein is the wheat gluten. And when you mix them together with a little bit of water, the sugar sticks to the protein. It glycosylates the protein. And then when you heat up this glycosylated protein, it oxidizes into this mat of bastardized, oxidized, free radical laden material, which is fine on the surface of a French bread. Yes, that's what bread crust is. And that's what these nice crusty cookies are. Yay, that's all fine to add advanced glycation end products on the surface of baked goods, assuming you want to eat them. But with every soft drink, every candy bar, every muffin, even vegan ones, okay, this is why you don't want to be a vegan junk food eater. You can't be healthy on energy drinks and granola bars because these high sugar foods send a tide of these simple sugars throughout your body, and they stick to proteins all over your body and create these advanced glycation end products. You don't worry so much about the name. Remember the acronym, AGE. They age you. You don't want to run the Maillard reaction in the protein of the lens of your eye. It's a great way to give yourself cataracts, because the sugar and the protein are obvious. The protein is our own hemoglobin. It's our own eye proteins. It's our own skin proteins. The sugar, as I mentioned, it's in the soft drink, it's in the candy bar, it's in the muffin, etc. The heat is not supplied by the baker's oven. It's supplied by our own 98.6 bodies, or 37 degrees Celsius bodies. And so you don't want to run the Maillard reaction, or you don't want to run the Maillard reaction in the elastin fibers of the skin. It's a great way to turn your skin into an old suitcase appearance. And you sure don't want to run the Maillard reaction in the inner lining of the blood vessels in your brain. These are the membranes across which oxygen has to get. And when we look at the brains of people who died of Alzheimer's disease, here's what we see. Here's someone who died. These are two people who died at the same age. The person on top did not have Alzheimer's dementia, and here's what his arteries look like. This person had Alzheimer's disease, and this is what we see. These artery walls are thickened, and they're filled with advanced glycation end products, and you can see how difficult it would be for oxygen to get across into the nerve tissue. This is why you don't want to eat sugar as a food. It ages you. It ages your tissues. It opens the door to dementia and a lot of other diseases. So that's what to stop kidding yourself about eating sugars or food about, even vegan sugars. Then there's meat-based diets. Now, most everybody in the West eats a meat-based diet. There's a piece of animal muscle in the center of every meal. Where's my protein? Let's just say if you don't have that piece of bacon or beef or chicken or fish. We eat a meat-based diet. Now, I could spend the rest of this lecture just on this slide to tell you all the problematic things that happen when people flood their tissues with cooked animal muscle. Let me quickly run down this list, because it's an important list for you to know. First of all, oxidized cholesterol. Nobody eats raw meat. And the very act of grilling that chicken breast, broiling that steak, cooking that salmon, oxidizes the cholesterol in the animal muscle, in the chicken muscle, the cow muscle, fish muscle. And the oxidized cholesterol is highly atherogenic. Those are the particles that work their way into the walls of the arteries, setting off atherosclerotic plaque formation, leading to heart attacks and strokes. When you cook animal muscle under high temperature, you're going to oxidize nucleic acids and proteins, and you're going to wind up with reactive aldehydes, malondialdehyde, glyoxylachlylene. These are mutagenic. It means they mess up your genes. They injure your genes that call for the enzymes that make your cells work, and that opens the door to cancers, birth defects, and biochemical dysfunction. New 5-GC, this is a sialic acid that only animals make, and it's highly inflammatory. If you stain for it, you'll find new 5-GC in coronary artery lesions. You'll find it in the lesions in rheumatoid arthritis joints. And our paleo friends and our keto friends are giving themselves a shot of new 5-GC with every meal. Endotoxin comes from the slaughterhouse. All animals pass through the slaughterhouse, even organic grass-fed beef. And as the animals' carcasses are eviscerated, as their digestive system is removed, the gut bacteria, the gut contents spill out and coat every cutting surface table in the slaughterhouse. With a culture tube, you can culture off every cutting surface nasty enteric bacteria, E. coli, Salmonella, Shigella, Pseudomonas, Enterobacter, these nasty microbes. Now, that means there's a film of these microbes on the surface of every steak and chop and chicken breast that leaves the slaughterhouse. It's wrapped up in clear plastic, it's sent to the supermarket, and in the meat case, under the ultraviolet light, these bacteria die and they break apart. And as they break apart, their cell walls release this nasty polysaccharide called endotoxin, nasty stuff. It depresses your heart. It sets off blood clotting. It releases histamine. It releases free radicals. Nasty molecule. And those people who are working in intensive care units, you know about endotoxic shock. You know how lethal this molecule is. Well, guess what? It's heat stable. Grilling the burger or broiling the chicken breast does not get rid of the endotoxin. And our paleo friends and our keto friends are giving themselves a shot of endotoxin 3 times a day, raises their white blood count, does a lot of damage in their body. TMAO, trimethylamine oxide. This is produced by the microbes summoned up from a meat-based diet. If you are eating meat and eggs, you are swallowing down big bolts of molecules like carnitine and choline. What will that do? That will summon up microbes in your gut that eat carnitine, choline, and they turn that carnitine and choline into a molecule called trimethylamine, TMA, which your liver oxidizes to TMAO, trimethylamine oxide. This is a molecule from hell. This drives cholesterol into the artery walls, inhibits the ability of good cholesterol, HDL, to pull that cholesterol out. And the folks on paleo diets are walking around with high levels of TMAO. Nothing good is going to come from that. Carcinogenic heterocyclic amines, these cause cancer. You can't help but create these by grilling that chicken breast or that salmon steak or broiling the beef steak. And these cause cancer. They rub on the stomach wall, increase stomach cancers. They rub on the colon wall. The meat eaters get much more colon cancer. These carcinogens find their way into breast tissue, prostate tissue, and they spawn cancers all over. And our meat-eating friends are saturating their tissues with these carcinogenic amines. IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, this is one of the most powerful growth-promoting hormones in biology, and your liver makes this in response to a protein load. When you eat a piece of meat, all those amino acids in the meat protein flood into your liver, and your liver responds by putting out a gush of insulin-like growth factor 1. This fans growth of tissues all over the body, which is okay if you're a growing child or growing calf. But if you are a woman with a little breast lump that's turning malignant, or you're a guy with a big prostate gland, the last thing you want is a gush of IGF-1 running through your tissues meal after meat-based meal, but that's what we do in the West. Heme iron, this is the type of iron that makes red meat red. Our bodybuilders, I want lots of iron for my muscles. Yeah, but the problem is that you can't keep heme iron out. The non-heme iron, the plant iron, if you've got plenty of iron in your tissues, your intestines can keep non-heme iron out from being absorbed into the bloodstream through the intestinal wall. Not so with heme iron. It just barges in and leaks into the bloodstream. If you've got too much iron, more heme iron just piles up, and this opens the door to iron overload. That it's an oxidizing molecule or atom that increases tissue damage, opens the door to strokes, cancers, and finally, the animals in the feedlot are fed bushels of grains that are sprayed with herbicides, pesticides, Roundup, heavy, they drink water with cadmium, mercury, arsenic. All these toxic molecules accumulate in the animal's flesh. So every burger that you bite into, every piece of buffalo wing is filled with these contaminants. This is what floods through the tissues hour after hour, meal after meal, after every meat-based meal. I call it the postprandial red tide. It's this tide of these toxic molecules flood through the tissues. And this tide has properties. It's what do we unleash on our tissues? We think we're Americans, we can eat what we want, but we're really unleashing this tide that is fatty and salty and sugary and antigenic and acid forming, and mutagenic and carcinogenic and atherogenic and pro-inflammatory and disruptive to most of the bodily enzyme functions in the entire system. This is the truth of the red tide. Now, when a real flood tide from a river or the ocean is flowing through your house, it's pretty distressing to watch your sofa float down the street, I grant. But what's really causing you distress from all that flood water in your house is what you know is going to be left behind by those dirty, contaminated flood waters. It seeps into the tissues of the house, and that's why you wind up ripping out the carpet and the baseboards and the wall timbers. This is the truth of a tide and what it leaves behind. Well, the red tide leaves its own stain behind in your tissue, its own stain of disease and dysfunction. An important equation here is the food effects from the meal over time equals the health effects that you see in your body and that you eventually bring to your doctor. And I can't overestimate the importance of time. You know, the Colorado River cut the Grand Canyon day after day after day after day. This is the power of persistence. Well, you eat 3 meals a day. That's 1,000 times a year. You have poured the red tide, assuming you're eating a standard Western diet, through your tissues. Your people are keeping these toxic molecules in their bloodstream essentially constantly. And we can't be shocked when dysfunction, disease shows up in the tissues. And I tell the young doctors, when you open the door of the exam room and you see the man there with the clogged arteries having angina, you see the type 2 diabetic injecting insulin, you see the dairy-loving lady with her bad acne, you see the man struggling with obesity. These are not random events. They are not just, oh, you got bad genes and there's a family history of it. This is what you're looking at as a result of repeated red tides flowing through that person's body day after day, month after month, year after year. And I tell my fellow clinicians who are recommending paleo diets and keto diets, really, doctor, are you really sincerely telling your patients that it's a good thing for them to be keeping these molecules flowing through their tissues day after day, month after month, year after year? I think that's a good thing. Yes, you keep on keeping these molecules in your tissues. And then we're surprised, we're shocked when the patient's body becomes inflamed. We're puzzled when the atherosclerotic plaques start building up in the arteries. Gee, we're amazed that their gut wall got leaky and they wound up with lupus or some autoimmune disease. And they have cancer that popped out of their colon wall. Gee, yeah, just bad luck, must have bad genes. Really, doctor? Can we, how dare we as scientists who can recognize a malfunctioning gene on gene A21 on chromosome 14. Boy, we can identify that with precision. But we're puzzled, we're mystified as we totally ignore the effect of the patient's daily diet on these diseases they bring to us. I remind my colleagues that the adage we practice our healing under, do no harm, applies to dietary advice as well. Now, I agree. Now, the paleo docs and the keto docs, hey, but my patients get better. They lose weight, their lipids get better, their diabetes gets better. Don't tell me this isn't bad. This diet works for them. It's a good diet. I'll say, yeah, there are some initial beneficial changes, but I say don't be seduced by these early changes. I'll ask you as clinicians, what are you really brewing? What's this diet really brewing up in these patients' artery walls? What's this diet really doing to the walls in their colon? What are you doing to this lady's breast tissue? What's this diet doing to this man's prostate? And what are you doing to the blood vessels in the brain? Yeah, you get this initial weight loss, and they're happy with that. Why? And you see this initial improvement. Why? Because most of these diets eliminate products that everybody agrees are troublemakers. They say no caveman ever milked a dairy cow. They didn't squeeze olive oil on their salad. They didn't grind wheat into flour to make donuts. So if you eliminate the dairy and oil and the flours from the diet, people will get leaner. I agree. And their lipids will get better and their diabetes will get better just for the weight loss. But again, we are not carnivorous apes. We're plant-eating hominids. And a flesh-based diet violates natural law. And I think these folks following this diet over time, over 10 years, are setting themselves up for an epidemic of colon cancer and heart attacks and strokes and autoimmune diseases, rampant type 2 diabetes. It's a great recipe to foster bacteria in the gut wall that's going to lead to Crohn's disease and colitis. And I think it's an invitation to epidemic dementia. And so with all respect, I ask my colleagues, do you know what you're doing really as you recommend these diets for life? And yet these practitioners, most of them not going to be around. They give this drive-by medical advice. Say, oh yeah, you already paleo, you already keto, and you don't see them again. Or you see a different doc, you move away, the doc moves away. And I asked, you're going to be around in 10 years when this lady has her stroke from that carotid plaque, your paleo diet spawned in her arteries. You're going to be around 15 years when this guy passes his first bloody stool from that colon cancer, your keto diet spawned in her gut. You won't be around to see it. You're long gone. But meanwhile, these people are going to be stuck with the results of this kind of unnatural dietary advice. We're Americans. We can eat what we want. Yeah, but your arteries got something to say about that. Your colon wall's got something to say about that. Your prostate or your breast tissue got something to say about that. We've been treating our patients' diets like in the Harry Potter movie, the Voldemort, you know, the words, the name that must not be spoken. Ooh, don't ask about the patient's diet. Ooh, that's cultural. They can eat what they want. Yeah, but the body's got something to say about that, and that's resulting in this epidemic of degenerative diseases we're all facing, both as doctors and patients. Nobody's eaten a paleo diet for 20 years. Nobody's eaten a keto diet for 3 decades. But I'm afraid we're doing this experiment, and the results are going to be disastrous. Now, people have eaten plant-based diets for centuries. And if you look at the blue zones where people live the longest, you find the one thing they have in common is they're eating largely a plant-based diet. Now, I'm not saying these folks are all vegan. Most of them have a little bit of flesh in their diet once a week, twice a week, but the vast majority, and this is my plea to you, the vast majority of food that goes down their gullets grew out of the ground and it's been minimally, if not at all, processed. And by the way, for the folks who follow Dr. Gundry, who said, don't eat beans, they got lectins. Actually, the one food that all these healthy people eat are beans. They all eat legumes and tomatoes. And if those evil lectins were so bad, these folks would not live to be 100, and so many of them do. A whole food plant-based diet is a major key to longevity. It's not all that you have to do, but it's square one if you want to be truly healthy. So how do you make disease reversal work for you? Start by realizing that within minutes of eating anything, molecules of that food are flowing through every cell in your body where your DNA lies unfolded. And as those food molecules wash through your cells and they wash over your DNA, they play your DNA molecule like a piano. And they turn genes on, they turn genes off. They induce enzymes, they shut enzymes down. Every meal changes us. Every meal brings in not only nutrients, it brings in information, and it changes us on a genetic, molecular level. You don't need to be a geneticist to understand that the genes are going to be turned on by this broiled steak with all the reactive aldehydes and new 5-GC and endotoxin, TMAO, heterocyclic amide, AGEs, all these molecules flood through the bloodstream, are going to turn on a whole set of genes that lead to aging, inflammation, autoimmunity, cancer. They are an entirely different set of genes than those that are going to be turned on by this meal, made of whole, fresh plant foods that flood the tissues with phytonutrient molecules that come from plants. These are antioxidants. They quench free radicals. They promote tissue repair. They are stabilizing molecules. It's all the difference in the world between a cooked animal muscle diet and a whole fresh plant food diet. In computer analogy, it's the difference between 1 and 0. Okay, it makes that much difference. If I can boil it down to one sentence, your genes may load the gun, but your diet and your lifestyle pull the trigger. You may have a genetic propensity towards a disease, but whether it manifests in your particular body or your patient's body largely depends upon the food they're running through their tissues day after day. Yes, the water they drink, the air they breathe, the stress under air, yes. It all plays a role, but it's the food that really makes the difference. Here's an example of this. Here is a genetic readout on the left here of a man with early stage prostate cancer. And all these red panels here, these are oncogenes. These are cancer promoting genes that are actively metabolizing, promoting the growth of the prostate cancer. This man went on a whole food, plant-based diet, went to eat lots of salads and steamed veggies and vegetable soups and Asian stir fries and curries, etc. for 6 months. Ran a whole food plant-based diet through his prostate gland. 6 months later, they did another biopsy. Same man, same prostate, same genes. But look at the difference in the genetic readout. Look at all these red active oncogenes that have now been silenced. They're now turned green. This is the power of food. You want to know how disease reversal works? It's the food, food for starters. Every meal changes us in one of two ways. It starts by as the food flows through our tissues, it turns on genes directly, like Mu5GC turns on inflammation, but also the food changes the microbes in our gut, and they will change us. Their byproducts get into the bloodstream, up into the brain. They turn on inflammation. They change membrane permeability. Every meal changes us. So how do you start reversing disease? Get real about the food. Because if you don't, especially if you're a clinician, you'll wind up like the blind man and the elephant. You know, the old fable, a bunch of blind men stumble upon an elephant. They each grab a different part. One grabs the tail, thinks the elephant's like a rope. One grabs the trunk, the elephant's like a snake. One grabs the leg, the elephant's like a tree trunk. They all have hold of the same elephant, but none of them have the faintest clue what a whole real elephant really is. Well, that's the same position our beloved medical specialists find their way in, and themselves in, when they're dealing with these diseases people bring to them. The cardiologist sees the clogged arteries, the internist sees the high blood pressure, the physiatrist sees the sore joints, the endocrinologist sees the type 2 diabetes, the rheumatologist sees the autoimmune disease, the dermatologist sees the psoriasis, the neurologist sees the dementia, the gastroenterologist sees the Crohn's and colitis, the general surgeon sees the colon cancer. And they're all looking for what's the cause of my particular disease. Gee, they have some common qualities. They all involve inflammation. They all involve oxidative stress and free radical. Gee, I wonder what genetic dysfunction could be causing this. Makes me want to get on the biggest soapbox I can find and yell at all of them. It's the food your patients are eating. You're all looking at the same disease. It's the Western fast food, meat, dairy, oil, sugar, salt diet flooding through their tissues that's creating these various dysfunctions in the various organs. And the organ that complains the first determines which specialist gets seen. But it's basically the same disease. And I tell the docs, listen, when you open the exam room door and your patient's on the exam table, it's never just you and the patient. It's always you and the patient's daily diet for the past X number of years. The patient's diet is the invisible sculptor that's chiseling away on the inside of their arteries and their joints and their skin, creating these diseases you're seeing. And to not share this information with the patient, just to raise their beta blockers and raise their statin doses and their metformin dose and say, come back in a month. If that's the kind of medicine the doctors are practicing, it deprives the patient of the most powerful tool they have to heal themselves, because a whole food plant-based diet will reverse these diseases, or at least make a major step towards greatly improving it, if not completely reversing it. Now, well, I'm telling whole food plant-based. What was this guy talking about? Here's what I'm talking about. And no meat. Where are we going to get our protein? Let me assure you, relax. Plenty of protein, plenty of nutrients. Here's a nice healthy day of whole food plant-based eating. Breakfast of oatmeal with some fruit and some almond milk with flax seeds on it. And lunches and dinners, nice colorful salads, hearty vegetable soups, and veggie burgers, sweet potatoes, and bean burrito, some green and yellow vegetables, some fruit like we had last night, some raspberries with oat milk. Good meal, good day of whole food plant-based eating. Look at what you get. 2,400 calories only, but a whopping 84 grams of protein and only 47 grams of fat. What a beautiful, nourishing way to eat, and not a drop of cholesterol. So again, this amazing, powerful concept that every physician needs to know about, every patient needs to know about, disease reversal. It's a possible, and this is where healing begins. Now, how to make it work for you. This is the point of the lecture. Why does a whole food plant-based diet work? How does it do it? Well, first of all, as I mentioned, so much of the diseases we face is a result of this grim hit parade of problematic molecules flooding through the tissue meal after meal, week after week, month after month, year after year. As soon as the person adopts a whole food plant-based diet, most important thing happens, the onslaught stops. Healing is allowed to begin. When you stop hitting yourself in the head with a hammer, the headaches go away. And instead of the red tide flooding through the tissue, what you now unleash, what you flood through the tissue, there is a deluge of not only water, there's a high water content diet, lots of water in the soups and the salad and the veggies, but they're filled with antioxidants and phytonutrients that bathe the tissues meal after meal with these healing molecules. And just a few changes that I have time to go into. All the greens foster production of nitric oxide in the arteries that dilate the arteries. All the water in the tissues makes the blood less viscous, so it flows easy. So between the more free-flowing blood and the dilated blood vessels, you get more oxygen delivery to the tissues, washes away waste, brings in nutrients. Right away, that's a big benefit to the tissues. You change the fat balance in the tissues. You pull out the arachidonic acid from animal fat, you put in omega-3s from the plants. Well, this changes the inflammatory balance in the tissues. The arachidonic acid is pro-inflammatory. You substitute in anti-inflammatory fats. Again, the antioxidants flow through the tissues, neutralize free radicals in the artery walls and throughout the tissues, bronchial membranes, etc. The microbes in the gut are fostered in a beneficial manner. You foster good Prevotella, the bacteria that quench free radicals. They reduce cancer incidence, and you're replacing the pathogenic bacteroidetes microbes. The blood lipids change. Cholesterol goes down. There's less atherogenic. The skin oils change. Acne often clears up. Psoriasis gets better. Body odor usually goes away. When you stop the dairy from the pregnant dairy cows, and they're all pregnant now, the hormone levels normalize, and breast lumps and fibroids reduce. The incidence of prostate cancer will go down. High protein diets are toxic to the kidneys. They induce a state of hyperfiltration that damages the kidneys. That stops. The lungs have less thick secretions. Asthma gets better. All these changes happen. It's just by swapping an animal-based diet for a plant-based diet. This is what unleashes the disease reversal process. I could spend the rest of the talk on the benefits that all this, the benefits that come from a whole food plant-based diet as it goes through each one of these organ systems, they get better. The body gets better. So back to our stop kidding yourself list. So stop skimping on the fruits and vegetables. Sometimes the lettuce on the burger is the only vegetables people get. You need to get ample amounts of them into your diet. We'll be talking about it, but make an art form. Like Dr. Furman says, the salad is the main dish. Have a fresh salad at least once a day, if not twice a day. But have those hearty vegetable soups, green and yellow, steamed greens and yellow vegetables, carrots, squash, sweet potatoes. This should appear on your plate essentially every day. You can't get healthy on granola bars and energy drinks. This is what a disease-reversing diet really looks like. And for those of us who practice plant-based lifestyle medicine, the changes we see are spectacular. Within days of adopting a whole food plant-based diet, the obesity begins to melt away. The arteries relax and open up. High blood pressures come down. The sort of inflamed joints stop hurting. The asthmatic lungs stop wheezing so much. The migraine headaches get better. The Crohn's and colitis gets better. They turn into normal, healthy people right in front of your eyes. It's the most exciting transformation in medicine. We all have patients like Emily who look like this, 100 pounds overweight, had clinical diabetes and hypertension. Went on a whole food plant-based diet. 11 months later, this Emily turns into this Emily. Not only figure she's much happier with, but normal blood sugar, normal blood pressure, off her pills. I tell the young students, what greater gift could you want for your patients? Why are you going into medicine? You want to heal these patients or don't you? If you do, get real about what they're eating, because that's why they're sitting in front of you, doctor, overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up, and inflamed. Get them on a whole food plant-based diet, and you get them on a real path to true healing. So stop kidding yourself that fats are benign and it's okay to be obese. Let's talk about reversing diabetes. Normally, here's a muscle cell. Normally, when you eat an apple and glucose shows up in the bloodstream, insulin comes along, opens up the insulin receptors that allow the glucose into the cell and where it can be burned for energy. But if you've been eating a high-fat, animal-based diet, your cells are all clogged up. The fat works its way into the muscle cells, and you accumulate intramyocellular lipid, and that clogs up the enzymes that allow glucose to be brought into the cells. This is not theoretical. Here's what it looks like under the microscope. This is striated muscle. This black stuff is fat in the muscle cells. Intramyocellular lipid should not be there, causing insulin resistance. Here it is under the electron microscope. For you scientists in the group, here's the normal mechanism. Here's sugar out in the bloodstream. Insulin comes along, activates two kinase enzymes. That's what these Ks are. And these kinase enzymes activate the GLUT4 mechanism that pulls sugar into the cell. But if the cells in the mitochondria are all clogged up with fat, that generates free radicals and ceramides that inhibit these enzymes. So insulin knocks on the door, but nobody answers. The sugar is not moved into the cell. It piles up in the bloodstream, causes all sorts of damage. And you can look up the mechanism about intramyocellular lipid. Now, along with that, we got to stop kidding ourselves that obesity is being healthy. The folks in the fat acceptance movements, oh, it's okay to be obese. You can be healthy and be obese. No, you cannot. Obesity is a state of estrogen excess and inflammation. What's making that obese abdomen obese? Well, first of all, there's two types of fat. Under the skin is the subcutaneous fat produces estrogens. It's the largest estrogen secreting tissue in the body. If you're a guy with a big prostate or a woman with a breast lump, you don't want 30 pounds of estrogen secreting tissues plastered on your abdomen. Leads you all sorts of places you don't want to go. But it's the fat in the abdomen, the wrapped around the intestine, the visceral fat, that causes the real damage. Visceral fat puts out inflammatory cytokines that drive inflammatory reactions throughout the body. Obesity is a state of inflammation. There's no getting away from that. It should not be accepted. It should be melted away with a plant-based diet. Now, this now loops back to the diabetes. Here we are with that clogged up muscle cell. And this is the liver cell as well. Here's the intramyocellular lipid interfering with the enzymes on the inside. But here comes those cytokines from the obese abdomen interfering with the insulin receptors on the outside. So no wonder so many obese people develop type 2 diabetes. Their insulin receptors are all clogged up. You want to reverse this in disease reversal? Get on a whole food plant-based diet, start melting away that fat. The muscles will burn this fat in here for energy. And the insulin receptors open up. The cytokines go away. The insulin receptors work just fine, and the type 2 diabetes goes away. It's a reversible disease. Somebody needs to tell our patients with this that it's preventable and reversible. This young woman should never develop type 2 diabetes if she keeps eating a whole food plant-based diet. We should raise our kids like this, and they'll be lean, healthy, and stay out of the clutches of people like me. This is absolutely reversible. Don't have time to go into it, but studies show that plant-based diets work even better than the Diabetes Association diet. Improves hemoglobin A1C, body weight. Even after a year and a half, they're doing better with weight, A1C, bad lipids. All of us who practice lifestyle medicine have patients like Jim, used to look like this, 100 pounds overweight, on insulin, whole food plant-based diet, off his insulin, running marathons. This is what we should strive for. And finally, in artery disease, the cardiologists think, once you get artery disease, everybody gets stents, everybody gets surgery. That's irreversible. Relentlessly progressive is the term they use. we got to stop thinking that clogged arteries always mean statins and stents and surgery. These are inflammatory lesions. It's the red tide that's injuring this endothelial lining, and the plaque is the response to it. But just putting a stent in here does not put out that inflammatory fire. This will, a whole food plant-based diet, especially the dark green leafy vegetables, saturate into the walls of the arteries, neutralize the free radicals, and melt away the plaque, as Dr. Esselstyn showed us in his elegant studies. And here is the left anterior descending arteries in someone's heart. The dye column from the angiogram should look this wide all the way down, but this rat-eaten section here, these are atherosclerotic plaques encroaching into the dye column. This person went on a whole food plant-based diet. 22 months later, soups and salads and greens flowing through these arteries, melting away the plaque. This artery turns into this artery. Same patient, same artery. This is the power of disease reversal through a whole food plant-based diet. And arteries all over the body open up, much to the delight of the owner of the arteries and the people who live with them. If you do not know the work of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, and you've got people, loved ones with clogged arteries, get his book, follow his advice to the letter, and you will reap the benefits. And the same thing, if you want to avoid Alzheimer's disease, the same thing that causes Alzheimer's and artery disease are the same. So let's stop talking about obesity being healthy. It's not. Here I have three I've grouped together. Stop kidding yourself about drinking alcohol, not drinking enough water, and cheating yourself on sleep. These all age the brain. Nothing good comes from drinking alcohol, not drinking enough water, and cheating yourself on sleep. It ages you and causes brain shrinkage. Neglecting healthy movement. Man, we are animals. We have to move. And you don't want to go into your old age with muscles that are so atrophied you can't get out of the chair at the nursing home. Those people die on a very predictable level. You need it to keep your joints moving, keep your muscles strong. Do something that gets you moving, whether it's yoga or strength training or just get outside and walk. It's absolutely essential. And the last several ones, we're losing our connection to nature. We're suffering from nature deficit disorder, and it withers our souls, and it takes the happiness and the direction out of our lives. It's so important to get out in something green every day and look out the window for 5 minutes. Find something natural, get a house plant on your desk, but keep your connection to nature. It's absolutely essential. And the last two is holding on to anger and resentment. Stop kidding yourself that that's any way to live your life. It's a poison. These are toxic, angry, poisonous emotions that eventually poison you, not the person you're angry at. And feeling hopeless about the state of the world and being in fear about it is also a way to cause disease. If you want to reverse disease, the truth will set you free. We ought to talk for real. The paleo folks, everybody ought to be eating paleo. Are they seriously recommending a flesh-based diet 3 times a day for 8 billion people that's going to destroy this planet and leave us truly in fear and hopelessness? If you don't know, we cut the throats of 80 billion creatures every year on this planet. And it doesn't matter what your cholesterol is, if you don't have a livable planet. Every one of these 80 billion creatures are breathing out carbon dioxide, they're belching out methane, they're eating grains sprayed with herbicides and Roundup, and it's destroying this planet. These poor bears are on this iceberg because of our insatiable appetite for flesh. Why? Because the industrial production of animal flesh is driving every single environmental disaster we face. Deforestation, that's why they're cutting down the forest to make grazing land and cropland for beef. The soils are eroding off fields of corn and soybeans and alfalfa for animal fodder. Most water is being used not by cities, but growing animal flesh. Most water is being polluted by manure, herbicides, and pesticides growing animal flesh. Most herbicides and pesticides are sprayed on corn and soybean fields. Most species are going extinct because we're taking their habitat for animal flesh production. As I mentioned, most of the greenhouse gases are generated by the 80 billion animals and all the fossil fuels being burned to produce them. And this is what we're facing. Well, let's just go to, we'll just eat fish. We are clear cutting the oceans. We are strip mining the oceans. Well, there's going to be nothing left from but jellyfish. And if you've not seen a film called Seaspiracy on Netflix, I urge you to do so. It's time to let the oceans heal. We've used fishing up. It's time to let the oceans heal. We've used meat production up. Please educate yourself. You want to take a step away from hopelessness? Go to the website called Comfortably Unaware. Read Dr. Appelander's great book, watch the videos there, and educate yourself and understand that a flesh-based diet is what's killing us, and that a whole food plant-based diet is the salvation waiting for us. It's time to leave caveman thinking behind. If we adopt a whole food plant-based diet, and that's the message that we are being given, the red lights are flashing. As individuals, you want to be healthy with clean arteries and a slim waistline, adopt a whole food plant-based diet. And Homo sapiens, if you want to keep surviving on this planet, the days of meat eating are over. Adopt a whole food plant-based diet. If we do, we will have reason for hope. We would need so much less land to feed ourselves. There would be land for the forest to come back. And as the trees grow, they take carbon dioxide out of the air. It would reverse the greenhouse effect. The soils would stabilize. The rivers would become healthy. The land would become healthy. The people would become healthy. There would be money not spent on bypasses and stents to educate the kids, to put internet in everyone's house, to feed the hunger. It would give us hope. It would save our future. Talk about disease reversal. Well, it's too hard. No, it's not. It's not too late, and it's not too difficult. If you've not seen a film called Forks Over Knives, please go to that website, see the film there, and then go back to the website. They've got meal planners and recipes and transition plans to help you make that transition. Go to my website, drklaper.com, download my free handout on how to create a healthy body and a healthy life. Now, there's these wonderful jumpstart programs. Planned Pure Communities has one. Rochester Lifestyle Medicine has it. PCRM has a 21-day free vegan kickstart. If you need help, ask for it. It's out there for us. Some wonderful books, Nourished by Brenda Davis and Reshna Shah, and the Shirzai's wonderful book on the Alzheimer's solution. And go back to this video presentation and go back to the slide and go to every one of these websites. They are on education in themselves. Educate yourself on the importance and the power of a whole food plant-based diet. People don't change. Yes, they do. They are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Here's my patient, Ken, 25 pounds overweight, on blood pressure and diabetes medicine, 12 weeks on a whole food plant-based diet, dropped 25 pounds. Normal blood pressure, normal sugar. People can change. They do change. So
not too good because you fucked it up.
So to make disease reversal work, stop kidding yourself. Now, what I've gotten here is fairly negative things that you should stop doing. So let me end by putting a positive cast on this. Stop kidding yourself about the standard diet. Help your body heal. Eat a whole food plant-based diet instead of a high salt diet. Avoid processed foods and stay out of restaurants as much as you can. Stop eating sugars of food. Use fruits as a sweetener and as your treats. Instead of a meat-based diet, eat legume-rich diet. Get fruits and vegetables in daily. Have that fresh salad every day. Favor whole foods that are naturally lower in fats, and the insulin resistance will clear. Whole food plant-based diet is the treatment to melt away obesity. Drink non-alcoholic drinks only. Drink water generously each day. Have a couple of big glasses. Stop kidding yourself about sleep. Sleep until you are refreshed, and take a nap during the day if you need to. Get out and move. Do something to move those joints and keep those muscles strong. Get a generous portion of nature in every day, and let toxic feelings go. If you can't fix something, let it go. A year from now, it's not going to matter. Let it not matter now. And love is always the answer. and do something to heal your world daily. At a minimum, eat a plant-based diet and set a good example. So, you want to make disease reversal work for you? Disease is not a natural state. It's our transgression of natural law. You can reverse it by getting in line with natural law, including that plant-based diet that we are built to eat, healthy living practices, and more love. That's how you make disease reversal work for you. Okay, so that's what I wanted to get across here. I will stop the share. And I think there's a whole bunch of folks who've gotten chat. So lots of hands up. I will go through these until the hook comes and we're through. I don't know how much more time we have left.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Klaper. This was truly a gift for all of us. And yes, we are so appreciative that you're going to take some questions. What we're going to do here, we want to make sure that everybody knows how to go ahead and ask a question. So forgive me for interrupting, but I just wanted to jump in.
Thank you.
Remind everybody now, for those of you that haven't already seen in the chat box, what we want you to do is go onto your Zoom screen and you'll see a little button that says reactions. And when you click on your reactions button, you can actually see there that a pop-up comes up and you can click raise hand. If you go ahead and raise your hand, we're going to select one by one each of your questions for as much time as allows. And we'll ask you to unmute as that happens once we select you. So with that, go ahead and raise your hands as you will. Also, we understand that there's been a couple of times we always mute everybody other than Dr. Klaper, but occasionally sometimes something breaks through. So we apologize for those tech challenges, but we always mute them right away as well. So thanks for bearing with us on all of that. So with that, Dr. Klaper, we have our first question. And so this one comes in from Trevor. And Trevor, if you would go ahead and unmute yourself and please keep your questions brief and direct for Dr. Klaper.
All right. Thank you, Real Truth, for this awesome presentation. As always, I really appreciate all the work that you do. Dr. Klaper, I've been following you for a while. You are also amazing and awesome. Quick question about wine. There's many of us, like myself, that we love an occasional red wine. What are your thoughts on if the red wine is organic, low alcohol, and even if we remove the sulfites, would you give it a thumbs up?
No, I won't. And God love you. I hear the question. And once a year, I have a glass of white wine with spaghetti dinner, but that's about it. The problem is not the good things in the red wine, resveratrol and the antioxidants. Those are from the grapes. It's the alcohol. Alcohol kills everything it touches. In the hospital, we dip our surgical instruments into alcohol because it kills everything it touches. And it does the same thing from the cells that line your mouth, to your stomach lining, to the tissues in your body. If you want the benefits of it, you want the taste of it, there's non-alcoholic wines. Or just if you want the resveratrol, eat the grapes, have grape juice, but there's just no way drinking alcohol is good for you. And so it's even sulfite free. So sorry to be a meanie there. I suggest you don't drink alcohol in any form. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Thank you. I totally understand.
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Klaper.
Right. Yeah, that said, once a year, once a month, you want a glass of red wine, it's probably okay. But the more you do it, the higher the risk of cancer and diseases. So less is more is all I'll tell you with alcohol.
Thank you again. And up next, we now have Kelly M. If you would go ahead and unmute yourself and go right ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Klaper. I jumped in a few minutes late, so I apologize if you covered this. I know that you've been working with a Teladoc group, and I wasn't sure if you had gotten licensed in Florida for that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have licenses in 4 states: California, Florida, New York, and Hawaii. And I can see patients in those 4 states through plant-based telehealth. And you can go to plantbasedtelehealth.com. But I work with Dr. Marvis, Dr. Miller. They have license in all the states. There's a plant-based doc with license in every state from our company. So absolutely go to plantbasedtelehealth.com and you'll find a doc who can help you. But yes, I've got a Florida license.
Thank you, Dr. Klaper. Up next, we have John L. John, if you go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Doctor, sometimes I meet former vegetarians or vegans who say they either didn't feel well on a veggie diet or they heard that they had to eat meat due to fruit allergies. Do you think that everybody can be veggie vegan, or is it you think they're not eating a healthy veggie diet?
Two answers in that question that you asked. Usually when I actually give me a 3-day food diet, what are you really eating? There's often lots of breads and processed foods and sugars and oils and things and not enough of the fresh green and yellow vegetables, the soups, the salads, etc. So often it's just not a high quality whole food plant-based diet. So that's the first thing to do. But that said, there are people who, as they transition to a whole food plant-based diet, they don't feel well, they go back to eating meat, and they feel better, and they say, it didn't work for me. And that happens to a lot of people. Why does that happen? What are we looking at? A long story, let me make it really quick here. Where you raise a child as a vegan, they have no problems. They grow up, I've delivered 3 generations of vegan kids, watch them grow up now, they do just fine. With most children, the baby is still nursing at the breast at 6 months of age, and it's 6 months still nursing with all the love in the parents' hearts. They didn't know, your mother didn't know, my mother didn't know, but with all the love in their hearts at 6 months of age, that jar of baby lamb, baby chicken, baby turkey is opened. And from that point on, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, animal flesh is slathered on that child's intestinal tract. All through infancy, through childhood, they're eating meat 3 times a day, through adolescence, puberty, their teen years, their 20s, their 30s, their 40s. You eat animal flesh 3 times a day for 30 years. And your body is going to develop a metabolic set because preformed muscle molecules, carnitine, creatine, fragments of myoglobin are flooding through the tissue from the animal muscle. Now, your body can make creatine and carnitine and myoglobin, but if it's coming in 3 times a day preformed since infancy, what do you think the genes are going to do as that child grows up? They're going to downregulate because those molecules are always in the bloodstream. And that's fine as long as there's a steady stream of those flesh-based molecules. Then the person hears a lecture like this or reads John Robbins' book or sees Forks Over 9, they're on plant-based. And most folks have no problem making the transition. But some folks, it may take as soon as they go plant-based, all those animal-based molecules, boom, you got to make them on your own right now. You got to make your own carnitine, own creatine, own myoglobin. Most folks can make this, but some folks, it might take them a few months or a year to gear up their enzymes, change their bacterial flora, et cetera, to shift into this plant-based gear. And during that time, they draw down on their own carnitine and creatine, so they don't feel so good. And then they eat that meat, and those molecules flood through their tissues. Whoa, I feel great, vegan, schmegan, man, I'm a carnivore. And but what do we witness? This is not normal physiology. This is an acquired dependency created by feeding a human infant animal flesh 3 times a day since infancy. No other primate does that. No other animal no primate does that. But we create this dependency and we think it's normal. It's not normal. You raise a child as a vegan, they have no meat cravings. They do just fine. They're athletes. So what we may really be watching in those folks who aren't successful as vegans are the folks who are taking a longer time to make this transition. And I cut them lots of slack. If they've got to eat a little bit of flesh once a week, twice a week for 3 months, 6 months, and slowly increase the interval between them, I grant them. Ideological purity is not the issue here. And some folks may need to taper off 6 months, 12, 18 months. That's fine. But get your meat eating down to once or twice a week, not 3 times a day. And so you might just be watching someone who just needed a longer time to taper off. There's getting to be these impossible burgers and things like that that might actually help in this transition. But I think that's all we're seeing. But in no way does that negate the wholesomeness of a whole food plant-based diet. It's what we ought to be raising our kids on and what we ought to be eating as adults. Some folks may have a little challenge in making the transition.
Thank you, Dr. Klaper. Up next, we have somebody named DF, the initials DF. If you'd go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Oh, hi, Dr. Klaper. Thank you for all the work that you do. I follow you for a long time. I have a couple of quick questions. The first one, I heard that dairy cheese, dairy yogurt, and dairy ice cream don't have as much IGF-1 as dairy milk. I'm not sure how true it is. I heard that from some paleo dieters. That's why it's okay to have those products. And another question is that there are some coconut oil in supermarkets that actually don't solidify at room temperature. But when I looked at their saturated fat content, it seems that the saturated fat content in those liquid coconut oil, it's pretty much the same as like solid coconut oil. So I'm not sure whether I'm missing something, maybe the manufacturing process, I don't know. Thank you.
Right. Okay. As far as the dairy, we have no more need for the milk of a cow than you do the milk of a giraffe or the milk of a moose. Would you pour rat milk on your cereal? Would you pour dog milk on your cereal? What is this? We're enamored by the milk of a cow. It's not healthy for us, independent of the IGF-1. And by the way, yes, that mother cow wants to give lots of IGF-1 to the calf. That's true. But the real problem is not the IGF-1 in the milk. It's the IGF-1 your own liver puts out in response to the dairy protein in the cheese and the ice cream, etc. It's your own IGF-1 that you shouldn't be putting out in large volumes as an adult that spawns these abnormal growths. Second, on my uncle's dairy farm in the 50s, when a cow was fertile, we'd lock her in the stanchion, call the breeder. He would ram bull semen into her uterus. She'd become pregnant. And if she was giving milk, she'd stop giving milk. Pregnant mammals don't lactate. They dry up. And my uncle had to say, well, bossy number 17 won't give milk till she has her calf in the spring. That's just biology. Well, in today's modern dairy operations, they're milking 1,000 cows, 2,000 cows twice a day. They can't afford to have their best milkers go offline for 9 months at a time while they're carrying their next calf. So they genetically modified the cows. And now the cows will give milk, even though they're pregnant with their next calf, they're still sucking milk off the cow. Well, a pregnant mammal has, all her tissues are full of estrogens, including the milk, gets into the milk. Studies showing that when you drink milk from pregnant cows, and they're all pregnant now, estrogen levels go up. And these are not the puny little phytoestrogens in soy. These are official mammalian active estrogens, estrone, estradiol, estriol, pregnanediol, progesterone. This is what's in the milk, organic or not. And why in the world do you want to be consuming this substance? And plus, it's got herbicides and pesticides and leukemia viruses. It's a dirty product filled with these allergenic proteins and estrogenic hormones. Why in the world do you want to eat yogurt made of that and cheese made of that? And nowadays, there's all these lovely plant-based cheeses and yogurts and ice cream. Good heavens, let's leave the dairy behind. And plus, it's a cruel industry, even if it's organic dairy. To keep that milk flowing, you must take that calf away from the mother. Within 2 days, the mother cries for days after that. It's inherent in production of milk. The veal industry is every male calf gets its throat cut to keep that milk flowing. It's a cruel industry. It's time to let dairy go in the ways of the dustbin of history. There's plant-based milks nowadays. Pour that on your cereal. Leave the whole dairy thing aside, organic or not. And don't be eating coconut oil. Eat a piece of coconut, that's fine. But these oils just leap into your bloodstream. They damage your arteries, they upset your hormones. Oils are not natural whole foods. I would not use them.
Thank you, Dr. Klaper. Up next, we have Joel C. Joel, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself, please. And thank you.
Hello, Dr. Klaper.
Hey, Joel. I know you.
You came to Tampa 25 years ago,
I did.
and you spoke to 100 people at Hillsborough Community College.
I
And
did.
I've been a fan before and ever since. I'm so delighted to hear your talk. And I'm especially delighted to hear, stop kidding yourself. Stop kidding. I've seen in 32 years of classroom teaching, people who kid themselves, who ignore what you're talking about. And it is uncanny. The evidence is in that you're showing the proof of it in clinical practice. And yet these knuckleheads are not listening.
Yeah, and do you have a question? I want to cut you off, but I share your consternation there.
Well, the constant challenge is, my question is, you're teaching to medical students, and
Yes.
I'm delighted that you're teaching. That's your forte. But
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
Of your students, how many are picking up the ball and running with it?
Good question. And it's hard to know, of course. You know, they say once you look behind the curtain, you can't pretend you don't know what's behind the curtain. In my lecture, some of which I gave to you just now, is to tear that curtain down and to tell the student this is a food before you order another $1,000 scan, another $500 set of lab tests. Ask your patients what they ate yesterday. That's why they're sitting in front of you, doctor. And if what they tell you is full of burgers and buffalo wings, send them to the plant-based dietitian. Let her or him do the counseling. You see them back in a month, and they'll be healthier. That's how medicine should be practiced. And I'm planting those seeds like Johnny Appleseed. I don't know which ones are going to sprout, but from the comments I get back, the students are saying, why didn't somebody tell us this? I'm so glad you turned on the light here. So I think it's really making a difference. I have that video on my website on drklaper.com. Go to my website and click on what I wish I learned in medical school about nutrition. You're welcome. All of you are welcome to see what I'm telling the medical students here. So hopefully the purpose is to create a generation of nutritionally aware physicians understanding the importance of their patient's diet, not to just blow right past it like we do now. But the knuckleheads, yes, people are kidding themselves, but it's not so much your fault. You've got this mega industry, this huge advertising industry, the meat and the dairy folks, burgers, French fries, fried chicken, pizzas, we're bombarded with that. And we think that that's the normal way to eat. So it's up to all of us to change our buying habits. What matters is when you're pushing that cart down the aisle, what you put in the basket, and what you order in the restaurant, and the example you set. Your friends notice what you're eating. They notice what you're ordering. That's how we change. We vote with our dollars and by our example. So they're not knuckleheads. They just don't know. They're still asleep. So help them wake up by your good example, and everything will start getting better from there. Thank you, Joel. Good to hear from you.
Thanks, Dr. Klaper. We're going to bring in now Dan from the UK. Dan, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself for Dr. Klaper.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you for your lecture, Dr. Klaper. I have a quick question. So a couple of years ago, I was traveling in Indonesia, and I had a really bad kind of bout of food poisoning. And pretty much since then, it seems as though my kind of microbiome has been thrown off. And I've been vegan for 5 years anyway, and if I kind of eat, a high fiber diet, I find myself bloating a lot more than usual, and kind of my kind of digestion is not what it used to be. So basically, what would you advise for kind of rebalancing the gut ecosystem following that kind of disturbance?
Okay, important question. And I recommend a lot of probiotics. I don't so much anymore. We need to realize that by and large, the good bacteria down in our gut, they're already down there in our gut, so are the bad guys, but the good bacteria are already down there. It's the food that we eat. It acts like the orchestra conductor in a symphony that brings up the woodwinds and tones down the brass. If we're eating healthy whole plant foods, they will foster the growth of the good microbes down there. Now, that said, to kickstart this, and I suspect you've already done that, but you're the rare kid. Most folks, even after taking a course of antibiotics, it's been shown that probiotics really don't help much. But in these chronic folks, and the folks I have with Crohn's disease or colitis, I find a couple of months of a potent probiotic can start changing the flora a bit. It's just empirical, but that certainly seems to work. But for a long-term vegan here who's having problems, he needs to get out the fine microscope here and look at the individual foods. For a day or two, he should just eat, say, quinoa, just for a day or two, and see how much bloating and gas he has from that. And then add in some dark greens, his favorite dark greens. And these are well cooked. These are as well cooked quinoa, well cooked green, some kale or some broccoli. Really steam it well and have small amounts of that. And if kale and broccoli, if the quinoa and the broccoli or kale, gee, that doesn't cause much of a problem. Then every 48 hours, add back in another food, some blended, some well-steamed squash, and start reconstructing your diet, individual food by individual food. If you go to the Thai restaurant and you have stir fry with oils and spices and all stuff, and you get all bloated and gassy, you won't know what did it. So if this is enough of an issue that you're consulting me about, then we go way back to square one. Just start with a healthy starch and a healthy green and a healthy yellow vegetable, and ride those for a few days and establish a little island of safe food, and then add in one food at a time every 48 hours. And if any morning you wake up bloated and distressed, say, what did I eat yesterday? And look back and pull that out and put in something else. So you've got to do a very careful reconstruction after an elimination diet. And that would be, and plus a overload of a good probiotic. And with a little luck, after a few weeks or months, you should notice a significant improvement. No fun, but what you got to do. Thank you, Dan. Good to hear your British accent. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Klaper. Up next, and forgive me if I am butchering your name, but we have Yaron or Yaron. Please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Klaper, about the amazing presentation, and thank you for the real truth about health. I have two quick questions. One, you mentioned Dr. Esselstyn a few times in your presentation. He's kind of against nuts for recovering from artery disease. I'm wondering what are your thoughts about eating nuts? And the second is many substitutes for dairy are based on coconut milk, but coconut milk products have saturated fat. So what is your thinking about, again, from the perspective of artery disease, about coconut milk products?
Lovely question, very important. Dr. Esselstyn, yeah, you have to realize, God bless him, he's a real saint. And he takes on the toughest patients, the patients whose arteries are so caked up and so clogged up, they can't walk across the room without getting angina and taking nitroglycerin. If you're in that category, yes, you should not be eating any nuts. The little bit of nut oil can injure the gut wall a little bit and injure the artery wall a little bit and inhibit the artery's ability to produce nitric oxide, which dilates it and lets blood flow in. If you're in that bad a shape, yes, nuts of any type are not your friend. But if you're not in it, if you've got wide open arteries, I'm 74 years old. I pedaled 10 miles this morning on my bike. I feel great. I had ultrasound of my arteries. They're nice and clean and wide open. A small handful of walnuts on my oatmeal is just fine. And so it depends where you are. The healthier your arteries are, the more liberal you can be. But again, at the most, we're talking a small handful of nuts, even my beloved raw walnuts, small handful, crumpled up, put it on my oatmeal, that's it, okay? I asked Dr. Esselstyn, you really won't let healthy people eat a little bit of nuts? She says, Michael, I'm afraid if I say nuts are okay, that it's going to give people license to sit in front of a TV with a 5-pound bag of cashews and show, no, Dr. Esselstyn says nuts are okay. And so he's just afraid of unleashing Pandora's box there. So it's easier for him to say no nuts. And fair enough. So you can see this continuum. It depends who you are, the state of your arteries, the state of inflammation in your body, artery disease and inflammatory disease. If you get your inflammatory markers, the HSCRP, and they're negative, a small handful of walnuts are not going to cause you a problem. But again, less is more. Don't be eating handfuls, especially of roasted nuts, but any of these other nuts, they're very high in omega-6 oils that can be pro-inflammatory. So small handful of walnuts, keep it at that. Coconut milk is full of fat. Yeah, absolutely. It is the coconut meat ground up and resuspended in water. And again, I don't have a problem eating a piece of coconut. Why? Or a couple of nuts. Why? Because the micro droplets of coconut oil in the piece of coconut, or the walnut oil, a piece of walnut, they're firmly attached to the fiber of the coconut, the fiber of the walnut. And when you chew it up and eat it, it takes hours for the digestive enzymes to get into that piece of coconut or walnut and start for the amylases to break up the starches and the lipases to emulsify the fats. And as a result, the tiny amount of fat in that piece of coconut get into your bloodstream very slowly, one pass through your liver, gone. But so that's why I don't have a problem with a couple of walnuts or a little piece of coconut. But you crush the fat out of walnuts or olives or coconut, and you create liquid oil. That stuff leaps into your bloodstream. Nothing slows down the absorption. And now you've got 2 tablespoons of coconut oil in your bloodstream, or 2 tablespoons of coconut of walnut oil, whatever. And it exerts pharmaceutical effects. It gets into the walls of the arteries and inhibits nitric oxide production, changes hormone levels, may increase cancer risks, makes the cell membranes more unstable. These oils have pharmaceutical effects. That's why us folks in the no oil camp are saying this is pharmaceutical chemistry you're doing here with these oils. They may taste good, but once you start stir frying your veggies in vegetable broth, that's really what brings out the flavor. After you make the transition away from oil, you don't even want to eat the stuff cooked in oils. So the same thing with coconut milk. It's basically just liquid coconut oil in a white sugary liquid. Not healthy for your arteries or any other tissues there. So I would say try going without the oils of all types, including the coconut milk.
Dr. Klaper, thank you for that. And up next, we have Pam. Pam T, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself, we're looking forward to your question for Dr. Klaper. And I think Pam is about to unmute herself. Let's give it one more second. Oh, here we are. Hi, Pam.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
I have a question. I heard you say that, as far as the body goes and stress, I have been under stress. I unfortunately have been dealing with an alcoholic situation in my life, and I really am taking it out on myself in a way, like trying to control it and everything. And I feel that it's done a lot to me as a person. So I'm trying to kind of wean away and just go into other ways of dealing with the stress of it. And I heard what you said, and it was very interesting. So I wanted to ask you about that a little bit.
Oh, my heart goes out to you, and welcome to the 21st century. How many of us are trapped in these stressful situations, money problems, relationship issues, and substance abuse from people we love. And you feel like you're in this pressure cooker, and the refrigerator, like the cigarette smoker says, Doc, I got 20 friends here, and whenever I need them. And the same thing, the refrigerator, here's taste delight whenever you want it. So what to do? And I wish I could wave a magic wand and clear that up. You've got to really, obviously, that person has to have a come to here about one, their issues and the effect it's having on other people. And on some level, you've got to, you got to declare a boundary that I can't do this anymore. This you're going to have to handle or whatever, but you need to establish some boundaries, some time or place where this is not affecting you. And you need to change your go-to foods that you're eating. You may still, this is a primordial thing when we're down, depressed, and anxious, we eat. We do that. I do it. We all do that. But I've got a bowl of grapes in the fridge, and I've got some mango chunks. And I'll dole out a bowl of mango chunks, and I'll eat them one at a time. And after 10 or 12 of those, it's enough. And I know I haven't hurt myself. Or I'll go through the grapes one at a time. I go outside, get out of the setting there, go outside and have one grape at a time and just really be with the experience of grape eating. And I've gotten my satisfaction food-wise from the stress that I was under, but I haven't hurt myself in the process. So I would go find some way, have a big bowl of vegetable soup in the fridge, ladle out a bowl of soup, microwave it, get it nice and hot, and have a nice hot cup of soup. And find these healthier alternatives to eat that don't hurt you along the way there. But again, that's kind of a band-aid. You got to get to the base of that problem, and that person's going to hurt themselves or hurt the people they love. And that's there needs to be a reckoning on that, and that's more than deeper than I can deal with at this Q&A. But good luck with that. But don't hurt yourself with your eating.
Thanks, Dr. Klaper. Up next, we have Keith. Keith, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself, we're looking forward to your question as well.
Dr. Klaper, thank you so much for your presentation. I am 70 years old, have eaten healthy, flexitarian diet forever, but in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been 100% plant-based. I look at the diet that you recommended for a daily diet, and it's pretty close to what I eat. I have a regular doctor who I go to every year, and he says, "You're doing great. I don't know what you're doing, but keep it up." I also have a wellness doctor, and which I do through Zoom, and they tell me, they've tested my genetics and my biomarkers, and about the only recommendation they could make to me was that you need to increase your omega-3s. So they suggested fish oil. I started taking fish oil, and I noticed that as soon as I took fish oil, I gained weight, like 2 or 3 pounds in a course of, a couple of days. And the longer I took it, I took it for about a week, my weight stayed up. So I ejected that and stopped taking the fish oil. Now I'm doing flaxseed, chia seed, hemp hearts on my oatmeal. And I'm also doing more flax seeds on my veggie wrap in the afternoon. But what else can I do to increase my omega-3s?
Well, what a beautiful question. For a couple of reasons, I'm in the exact same position. And I used to be taking the algae-derived DHA, and there might be a place for that if you are just really bottoming out. But there's a question about how accurate the tests are that measure the omega-3s, et cetera. So to cut to the chase here, because I'm not 100% convinced that even taking these algae oils, the intent is good, but they change things. They change the permeability of the brain cells. And in Florida where I live, there's carcinogens in the water. Am I increasing the risk of brain tumors by taking these? Where they suppress the production or the metabolism of EPA, one of the omega-3 fats. When you take the DHA, it changes the metabolism of the EPA. It changes things. It's not a really natural thing to do. So I'm not convinced that a young, healthy person eating lots of flax seeds and chia seeds and walnuts really needs to be taking algae oil, because the reference is, everybody ought to be, all vegans should be taking algae-derived DHA. Well, is that really true? I'm not sure. So I decided to do my own experiment. So for 6 weeks, and I'm in week 4 of it, I've made it a point. Well, then let me go full tilt here. And I made it a point every morning. I take 3 tablespoons of ground up hemp, chia, and flax seeds. and either put it in my oatmeal or I put it in a little glass with a little rice milk and I just spoon it in, plus a handful of walnuts. So, and for 6 weeks, I'm going to be doing this regularly good dollop of omega-3 containing foods to see if I can turn the linolenic acid, the 18 carbon atom chain in the flax and chia seeds into my EPA and DHA in my own tissues. So on week after 6 weeks of doing this, I'm sending off 4 determinants, all on the same day. I'm going over to Quest and having them do their omega profile, but I'm also sticking my finger and I'm sending off an omega quant to the omega quant folks. I'm sending off a finger stick to Great Smokies lab, and I'm sending one off to Genova labs. And I'm going to get all 4 of these back, and it's going to tell me a couple of things. One, if all 4 of them say it didn't do a darn, your omegas are still down in your boots, then I'm be more open to taking the algae. If they are all abundant high, then it worked, and I don't need to be taking algae oil. And so that's a great sign to me that you can do it off of food, but you really got to eat the things. But if they're all over, if one's high, one's low, one's all over, then that gives me a real sour taste about the whole testing thing and people making these big decisions off of that. So basically right now, I tell you, stay tuned. I'm going to put it out in my newsletter, middle of May, May 15th, around that week. I'm going to get my omegas checked, and I'll let you know how that turns out. So with you, I don't know what your numbers are, how you're doing. They're very interesting about that weight gain. There's a definite reason for that. I would say either just stick with your flax, chia, hemp seeds, and walnuts for a couple of months, and then send off a test. I'll be able to tell you which one if you sign up for my newsletter. Or you're 70. The concern is about our dementia risks and brains, whatever. If you wanted to take one of these algae derived, not from fish, but algae derived, that's where fish get it. They don't make it, they get it from the algae. An algae derived capsule, but I don't think you need it every day. Once or twice a week is probably sufficient. That would kind of put you in a middle safe ground, I imagine. So sorry, I can't give you an exact answer. I'll be able to give you a much better one in the middle of next month. But I would say absolutely either way, stay with the flax, chia, hemp seed mix and have a handful of walnuts on most days of unroasted English walnuts. And if you still want a little insurance, one of those algae derived capsules, but no more than a couple times a week. I wouldn't be taking them every day. Best I can do for you today.
Excellent, doctor, and thank you for that. And up next, we have Diane H. If you'd go ahead and unmute, we are looking forward to your question. And looks like she'll be doing that in just a moment. We thank everyone, all of you, for having very brief and to the point questions for Dr. Klaper. That's very helpful as we do these Q&A sessions. So thanks, everybody. Diane, are you able to unmute yourself? Diane H. Let's give her one more second. I guess I tell you what we'll do. We'll move on to the next person, and then we'll circle back and see if we can get Diane one more time. Renee, you're up next. Renee L., if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. I have a question about lipoprotein A. If someone has that and they're eating a whole food plant-based diet, no oil, low nuts and seeds, everything that you teach, basically, Dr. Klaper, is there anything else that they can be doing to lower their little particles that are floating around in their bloodstream?
Yeah, that's an important question. The LP-A, this is a protein wrapped around your bad cholesterol. LDL has this protein, this apoprotein, that can make it more able to burrow into the wall of the arteries there. There is some evidence that a really healthy, low-fat, whole food plant-based diet can actually reduce the amount of LP-A in your bloodstream. But again, we don't die from our lab numbers. What I would suggest is this. Again, the atherosclerotic plaque formation, this is an inflammatory process. These arteries are being injured meal after meal by the red tide standard Western diet there. If you're not doing that, if you're eating rice and beans and greens and veggies, and that's all that's flowing through the arteries, the odds are your arteries are fine, no matter what your ApoA level is. So I will invite people to go to my website, and I've got a free video called Beyond Cholesterol. And the gist of that video is that, again, this is an inflammatory process. Before we freak out about the ApoAs and all that stuff, get your inflammatory markers checked. And I go through what they are: high sensitivity CRP, oxidized cholesterol, myeloperoxidase, prostaglandin 2, and phospholipase. These all go up as plaque is developing and plaque is softening, getting ready to rupture. These numbers go up. If they're all stone cold negative, as inflammatory markers. And if you get if you have your doctor send you over for an ultrasound scan of your carotid arteries and they are clean as a whistle, relax, whatever your ApoA, doesn't matter. It's not causing you any harm. In medicine, we're in med school taught, treat the patient, not the lab result, treat the patient, not the x-ray. So find out what's happening in your arteries, check your inflammatory markers and actually visualize your arteries. And if the inflammatory markers are negative and your arteries are clean on scan, don't measure your ApoA again, doesn't matter.
Excellent, doctor. Thank you. Up next, we have Sophia. Sophia, if you go ahead and unmute yourself. We look forward to your question for Dr. Klaper. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to you, Dr. Klaper, for all you are doing to help us. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes.
I have two short questions. I had radiation injection due to synovial inflammation in one knee. And I wonder how I can detoxify from radiation. And the second question is, I have just seen my ophthalmologist and he said that I am beginning of cataract. And I wonder if there are any supplements or anything to help to avoid the chirurgical procedure.
Okay, I apologize. I missed two important diagnostic terms. Your knee is inflamed because of what? Post-radiation? Why
Yeah,
is it
I had because of synovial inflammation.
You had synovial inflammation and they radiated your synovium?
Yes.
Did you have a cancer? Did you have a synovioma there, or was it just inflamed?
No, it was just, I'm living in Canada and they did like a sort of medication to help, but it didn't help at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
If that's synovial, if you came to me, I would, again, get you on a really healthy, whole food, heavily raw food, plant-based diet. And I would probably have put you on a 5 or 7 day water fast and to calm down that inflammation. And then really increase the anti-inflammatory herbs that Dr. Greger tells us about, the turmeric and the ginger, and make up a Dr. Goldner's anti-inflammatory smoothie, make up a big green smoothie with some turmeric and flax seeds in there. And I would just bathe those tissues in anti-inflammatory substances and maybe do, every other weekend do a brief water fast. I would really work on that from the inside rather than radiating from the outside. If you're still left with inflammation there, I would still do those same things. I would consider, if you've never fasted before, just up to 48 hours or 72 hours on water, say, or vegetable broth. You can buy broth at the store, low sodium vegetable broth, and just drink vegetable broth over a weekend. And then go to the website of Dr. Brooke Goldner, Goldner, cured herself from lupus, and watch her video on how she makes her green smoothie, how she packs a blender full of greens, and have one of her green smoothies every other day, and go to Dr. Greger's website called nutritionfacts.org and type in the search word inflammation. And see his brief little 3-minute, 5-minute videos on all the anti-inflammatory herbs. And I would throw those in the smoothie or get it into my cooking. I would really come in from the anti-inflammatory side and see if you can settle that down. I didn't hear the exact diagnosis in your eye, but I suspect there's some inflammatory process happening there, macular degeneration or whatever. And the treatment's the same. What you're doing for your bloodstream that will help your knee is also going to flow through your retinal tissues. And I expect it would also help your eye as well. So Go with these highly anti-inflammatory food mixtures rather than any supplements. You might consider, since the algae-derived DHA has an anti-inflammatory property, for a limited period for 6 weeks, you might go through one bottle of these pills of the omega-3 fat derived from algae. Just go through one bottle for 60 days, say. And that anti-inflammatory program will hopefully give you a healthier knee and a healthier set of eyeballs there. Good luck.
Thank you so much, doctor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dr. Klaper. Up next, we have, and forgive me if I am butchering your name, I'm not sure if it's Maya or Maya, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself for Dr. Klaper.
Hi, Dr. Klaper.
Hey,
thank
Maya.
you so much. You might remember me from a talk
Yes.
you recently gave.
Yes.
For med students at Queens. I was wondering how much of cholesterol is genetic. We often hear patients and doctors refer to cholesterol as, you know, it's genetic. That's the way it is. Can't do anything about it. So I was wondering what your take was.
There is a genetic component, surely, and surely there's a range of everybody's genetic set. But to think that it's set in stone, it's in your genes, and nothing you can do about it. Your liver makes cholesterol, and it makes it for a good reason. It knows that your adrenal glands use cholesterol to make your cortisol and adrenal steroids. Your ovaries, if you have them, use cholesterol to make estrogens. Guys, we make testosterone out of it. We use cholesterol to make new cells, and your liver knows this, and so it pours out cholesterol. And sometimes it'll pour out more cholesterol. Sometimes it puts out less cholesterol, depending on what's happening in our organ tissues, but also in our diet. And it depends how much, and a significant amount of cholesterol is the cholesterol people are eating. And it's cow cholesterol, chicken and pig cholesterol, that's in the bloodstream. So just to say cholesterol, oh, it's genetic, nothing you can do about it. That's uninformed medicine, and I'm being generous. It's lazy medicine. It's not 21st century medicine. You absolutely want to help your liver put out as little bad cholesterol as possible. So cut back on the sugars, cut back on the junk fats, the trans fatty acids, the heavy saturated fats, the coconut oils, all that stuff. You know, just eat a whole food, plant-based diet, salad after soup, after steamed veggies, without the extra oils, etc. And let your liver decide how much cholesterol it wants to get out in the bloodstream. But again, it's not the cholesterol per se. We are seeing that it's the oxidized cholesterol that one, again, is from cooked meats that's more atherogenic. All cholesterol, let's put it this way, very important distinction that I try to tell my medical colleagues. There's a difference between hypercholesterolemia. In other words, I've got vegans walking around with cholesterols at 220, but it's not oxidized. Their arteries aren't inflamed. Their inflammatory markers are negative. Their ultrasound's negative. They don't have the disease of atherosclerosis. There's a difference between elevated cholesterol, just a transient hypercholesterolemia from your liver putting out extra, versus the inflammatory fire disease burning in your arteries called atherosclerotic disease. That comes from repeated red tides of cooked meats and sugars and oils and phosphoric acid and cola drinks and chlorinated drinking water and all that assault that we inflict on our artery walls that makes those plaques grow. That's an active inflammatory disease. That's not the same thing as a vegan eating rice and beans whose liver decides it needs 210 milligrams of cholesterol in the bloodstream. They are not the same thing, but the cardiologist put it, saying, you got cholesterol, you got disease. Not so, doctor. Look at the patient in front of you. If you've got a lean, healthy vegan person who's just eating rice and beans and greens, and she happens to have a cholesterol at 204, do not put her on statins. Check her inflammatory markers, check her ultrasound. If those arteries are clean, not inflamed, she doesn't have the disease of atherosclerosis. She doesn't need to be on statins. So don't give these numbers more power than they deserve. Check to see how, the issue isn't how high is your cholesterol. The question is how healthy are your arteries? Are they inflamed or not? Find out if they're inflamed by checking those inflammatory markers in the ultrasound and act on what you see there, not on the cardiologist's fear that everybody with high cholesterol, they all have disease. On some level, he's right, because when he opens the door of his waiting room, everybody's sitting there, they're all eating cheeseburgers and buffalo wings. And they're right, they all have high cholesterol, they all have artery disease. So when the cardiologist said everybody with high cholesterol is got the disease of atherosclerosis, but they're not treating the vegans. The vegans don't sit in his office, they have damn heart disease, so he never sees them. So that's the blurring of the lines that's very unfortunate in our society. So if you're a healthy vegan eating healthy foods, get your markers checked if they're negative, relax, and don't get your cholesterol checked again. It doesn't matter.
That's great. Thank you.
Dr. Klaper,
Yeah.
thank you so very much for all of that. Everyone, Dr. Klaper, you've been incredibly gracious with your time. It's been 2 hours, and thank you for taking so many questions. We have a lot more folks that wanted to ask questions, and we appreciate that, folks, but we are out of time. And so we thank you for joining us for this really, truly incredible presentation. Dr. Klaper, again, thank you for your time and really your expertise. This has been phenomenal. And with that, we will let you go. We want to let everyone else know that we'll be back in an hour at 7 p.m. Eastern. We are going to have, speaking of phenomenal, yet another phenomenal lecture. It's going to be a panel tonight, The Best and Worst of Modern Medicine, with Ian Harris, Mark Sloan, Ralph Moss, and Gerald Posner. Not to be missed. We'll be back here at 7 p.m. sharp. We look forward to having you all back then. Dr. Klaper, again, we're filled with gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you.